Welcome back to Let's Have It Out. Tonight we're in conversation with Absa, dissecting the company's new slogan, Africanacity. Let's hear from a caller. We have Louise from Johannesburg on the line. Hi Louise, what's your question or comment?
Hi, good evening Aurélie and Mr. Zibi.
Good evening.
Yes, so my comment is that the issue is, of course, we don't want the law to be waived in any way for that situation. But when they were called out on social media, the issue was that we asked, are you now including asylum seekers because of your Africanacity policy? But they kept saying, yes, we do. Send us proof from a bank that you've been to, a branch that you've been to, and let us know who's the consultant that you spoke to that turned you away for having asylum seeker permit. So we did that. We phoned Rosebank, Campus Square, Kingsmead in Durban. We phoned basically around the country to find out. And every time we got the answer that was no, or someone that doesn't have the adequate information. I did hear Mr. Zibi mention that when you get you can get the account when you get granted asylum seeker status. But the consultant at the bank said they are now making provisions for people who have refugee status. So there's a huge disconnect between can you get it with a Section 22 permit, or which is asylum seeker, or a Section 24 permit, which is a refugee status permit. So the staff at Absa, including, unfortunately, Mr. Zibi, are not clear about what exactly it is that they require for an asylum seeker or a refugee because there's a big difference between the two of them. There are some asylum seekers that have been in the country for more than 20 years. The backlog is so long. So these people still need to work and study. They are allowed to work and study in the Republic of South Africa because that's what the law says. So the problem was that the Twitter account kept saying, we do allow asylum seekers, Until the end, they are still denying that they are turning away asylum seekers, where people are actually going into the banks and they are telling them that they cannot open the bank account. So that is our huge issue.
Thank you very much for your call, Louise. Appreciate that call. So, Songezo, there appears to be a disconnect. Like if I hear what Louise is saying, how would you respond to that?
So I think there might have been a misunderstanding on the part of the community managers on social media, on Twitter. Here is the situation. If an applicant for a bank account does not have the documents that are an absolute requirement in terms of the Financial Intelligence Center Act, whether you are a resident or not, you are simply not able to open a bank account. Whether you're an asylum seeker, it's not something that is peculiar to asylum seekers. In fact, I will give you an example of when South Africans sometimes may have a problem opening a bank account. I come from a village. There are no street numbers. There are no streets. We do not pay rates there. You have to prove that you are a resident of that area. In order to do that, you need a letter from a councillor, a local councillor, or from a chief in order to confirm that you are indeed from that area. Unfortunately, there is no bank, not Absa, not anybody else who is able to waive. Let's get something clear. Having a slogan that says Africanacity does not give us the powers to amend legislation, no matter how much we want. If one of my colleagues on social media said an asylum seeker is able to open an account, they were wrong. So I think it's also important, though, there is somebody who is seeking asylum. That means that person, unfortunately, the system, we heard the caller talking about a 20-year backlog. Unfortunately, the system has not given that person the instruments through which they can live because they need to have their asylum application adjudicated and completed. To come to a bank and expect us to resolve that problem, it's not something that we can resolve. However, we fully appreciate the problem.
So, Songezo, why have the slogan, and who does Africanacity then represent? Would it be fair to say that Africanacity only represents a certain group of Africans and not the large population of refugees and asylum seekers?
I think your question is narrowing it too much. So I'll give you an example. We've got a product in Kenya called Timiza. What Timiza allows people to do is small traders who need loans on a 48 to 72-hour cycle so that they can procure goods and sell them on. And it uses the information that would be under RICA. So if you've got a cellular phone, you've got a cellular phone, and your cellular phone is registered. You can access credit. So you can get your money immediately, make a mobile phone application, you get your credit, you go and you buy your goods, and then you sell them on. Within 48 to 72 hours, that money has been paid back. Now, the normal loan application process at a bank would typically take days. Now, that is a responsive solution for people who are trying to make their way. I do not think it is correct to use an instance where there is a multitude of issues. There is legislation, there is administration of the civil service in South Africa, and on that basis make an attempt to disprove a position that we have taken that has got a multitude of points through which we can prove that we aspire to that goal. If this is about asylum seekers, let us have that conversation. I do not think it is correct to use that conversation to talk about what is in effect a government policy and administrative issue.
Okay, let's hear from another caller. We have Tebogo from Uppington on the line. Hi, Tebogo, what's your comment or question?
Hi, good evening to your guest, Mr. Zibi. I think I partly get your point about the legislation that then seeks that exclude asylum seekers as far as your bank is concerned. This was the biggest rebranding or marketing exercise in South Africa, at least post-democracy. My question is, it will seem, at least from where I'm sitting, that grassroots media, more specifically community radio stations in this country, were excluded from this massive campaign that you had all over the place. Why will that have been the case? Because that is my sense that community radio papers, newspapers were generally excluded from the campaign.
Songezo, how would you respond to Tebogo's question?
So there are thousands of newspapers, hundreds of newspapers in South Africa, and a campaign like this does not take place over a few weeks. And it's not just about the campaign, it's about the products that we market as well. So what we have gone is we've gone for, in the beginning, in the first 6 months of the campaign, we have gone for big national platforms because they give you the reach that you are looking for instantly. When we set out to do this, you look at the best combination of television, newspaper, internet, and you look at what the numbers are going to give you. It's not the only big rebranding, by the way. We've had Vodacom and other companies doing it. I get the point, but when you look at a campaign like this, you look at it in a state that you can manage. And we certainly have had, possibly have been, a significant media buyer in this period because of the rebrand.
All right, let's go to a quick ad break. We'll take more of your questions and comments when we come back. Don't go anywhere.